Okay, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen? Today is going to be a very different kind of video than what I normally do. I'm going to try and get through this quick because there's a lot of books to get through. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through everything I read the entire year. I'm going to give a very quick review. And by very quick, I mean like, do I recommend it? Did I like it? That's it. That's all we're going with, okay? Because there's a lot of books. If I do an in-depth review on each one, we're going to be here for 19 hours, and I'm not doing that. So, this is a very weird video. I don't normally do it like this. I'm not wearing headphones. It feels odd, because I always have headphones on. This is weird. We have all different kinds of genres here. We got comics, we got manga, we got academia of all different kinds. We have, historical fiction, literary fiction, fantasy, sci-fi, horror, detective, mystery. What else do we got? I don't know. We got a lot of stuff. So, yeah, we're gonna start this. We're gonna get through it. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun. So, this is gonna take me so long to do, and even more annoying to edit. But we're gonna get through it. Okay, we're gonna get through it. So, let's start this off. First book we got, The Last Kingdom by Bernard Cornwell. Very good. If you know the Netflix show The Last Kingdom, that's what this book series is based on. If you like the show, definitely read the book. Books are quite different because Uhtred is not a grown man. He's a kid going throughout this entire journey. But the books are fantastic. Very easy to read. Nice to get through. Enjoyed it. Definitely recommend. It also hits historical fiction in case you wanted to know. Fucking glare. Up next, we have Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. Was good. Enjoyed it. I think it got a little bit repetitive at times. But, if you're talking about a case of disproving the existence of God, I guess you have to be a little bit thorough. So, a little bit too much. I think you could have cut it shorter. Good book nonetheless. I'd recommend it if that's something you're into. If not, it's okay. Up next, we got The Parasitic Mind by God Saad. He is a professor. It says how infectious ideas are killing common sense. I actually really enjoyed this book. I think some of his points you may not agree with, but I really liked his writing. He's really witty. I liked his ideas, most of them. I didn't agree with all of them. I agreed with some of them. Definitely would recommend to a lot of people. It's a very good book, I would say. Bro, I'm gonna need a wardrobe change. I'm fucking sweating. We've changed the wardrobe. It's getting too hot in here. Next, we got The She-Hulk Omnibus by John Byrne. Absolutely amazing. Love the art. Classic 90s, 80s. Art, stories, John Byrne, one of the best out there. She-Hulk as a character, amazing. Love her stories. Fantastic place to start. It's like one of her first omnibus besides the Savage She-Hulk. Love it, definitely recommend. Next we have Superman vs. Muhammad Ali, Deluxe Edition. Now, again, it's by Neil Adams. Again, I wouldn't recommend this if you're not like a super fan of Superman or Muhammad Ali. It's just a fun little thing to have. The story itself is not that great, but neither is the art. But like, it's classic, it's fun to have, nice in your collection, so recommend it if you want it, but not necessary. That's January done. We're now on to February, starting off with The Pale Horseman by Bernard Cornwell. This is book 2 in the Last Kingdom series. Now for the rest of the year, you're gonna see I didn't continue reading the series. Not because I put it off. I do want to read all 13 books in the series. These books are fantastic. I love them. I have like ADHD with book reading, man. I'm just all over the fucking place. The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse by Charlie McKeesey. I don't know how you pronounce that. Man, can you stop glaring so much? I just want them to see the goddamn book. All right, either way, good book, very sweet, very touching. Teaches a nice story of, friendship, love, and kindness, no matter who you are or where you come from. Great book. You read it in like 20 minutes. Definitely recommend. Up next, we got The Batgirl Omnibus by Gail Simone. Highly recommend this. Art is breathtakingly beautiful. Love the story. Barbara Gordon is Batgirl. Very fun. Very charming, very relatable. Highly recommend it. If you want to get into more, not really Bat Family, but if you want to get into more female characters for comics, great place to start. Up next, we got The Darth Vader Omnibus by Charles Scholl. Can't recommend this enough. If you're a Star Wars fan, even if you're not a Star Wars fan, and you just want to see some of the most badass shit, pick yourself this up. Very short read. It's like 500 pages, 550 pages. Art is beautiful. Darth Vader is being the absolute GOAT. Highly recommend. Up next, we got Daredevil Volume 7 by Chip Zdarsky. It's a continuation of his run on Daredevil. One of the best out there right now for sure. If you want to get reading on Daredevil or just a great comic series, Daredevil by Chip Zdarsky. Highly recommend. Here we have The United States of Captain America. Fantastic story. Loved it. It's like a bunch of different Captain Americas, or it's basically Steve, but other people from other places donning the suit, calling themselves Captain America, and they go together to fight. There's like a Native American one, there's Sam, there's a few others. Great story, love the art, highly recommend. Up next we got Zeus, King of the Gods, from the Olympian series by George O'Connor. Dude, if you love Greek mythology and comics, definitely start this series. I haven't gotten a chance to buy all the other ones. There's like 13 or 14 because it's all the different kinds of gods in the pantheon. I'm gonna read the shit out of this. Loved this one. Definitely continue on reading the rest. Highly recommend. And the last read of February is Truth, Captain America Truth. This is a great read. Fantastic read. If you watched Falcon and the Winter Soldier, you will have seen Isaiah Bradley in that show. This is his comic right here. Great story, great character, love it, highly recommend. And starting March off, Vikings Blood and Blade by Peter Gibbons. Let me tell you, this trilogy right here, dude, unreal. Historical fiction, absolutely amazing. You like Last Kingdom, Vikings, that kind of stuff? Right there. The ending of this book, dude, I missed my train stop. I was reading it on the way home on the train, and I missed my stop because I was so infatuated with the book. I was just sucked in. I read like the last 100 pages on the train ride home. Amazing. Great book, great trilogy. Currently reading book 3 right now, so it's not on the list. Almost through it. Amazing. Definitely recommend. Up next, we got Batman Year One by Frank Miller. If you remember during this time, this is when The Batman 2022 was coming out, and I wanted to reread some stuff, getting ready for it. What better way to start than Year One, you know what I'm saying? This is iconic. Everybody knows it. If you don't, go pick it up and read it. One of the best comics out there for sure. Highly recommend. And we got volumes fucking 1 and 2, A Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man by Tom Taylor. Highly recommend this. Really enjoyed this. There is one issue in particular where Spidey helps the kid with cancer, and it is the most touching thing. I cried while reading it. Definitely recommend both of these volumes. Fantastic. Up next, we have okay, Glare. Listen, dude, fucking boom. We have issue 1 of Punisher by Jason Aaron. This is his new run. The volume 1 just came out in December. I actually read it. You'll see it on the list at the end of the video. This is issue 1. Really good. Buy the volume, don't buy the issue, I guess, whatever, but recommend. Batman, The Man Who Laughs by Ed Brubaker. Great story from what I remember. It's just your classic Batman vs. Joker story. Good art, good story, quick read. Recommend. Up next, we got Wolverine Infinity... Dude, this fucking glare, bro. I'm gonna kill somebody. There we go. Wolverine Infinity Watch by Gary Dugan. Recommend. Good art. Classic Wolverine story against the Skrulls, Infinity Stone stuff. Good read. Next is Ghost Rider 4 on the Floor by Felipe Smith. This is with Robbie Reyes as Ghost Rider. Let me tell you, Ghost Rider, one of the baddest out there. Great art, great story. Recommend. Easy read, fun to have. Recommend. Next we got Batman Volume 1 by Ed Brubaker. Another fantastic read, great artwork. I'd recommend this. Not for your regular average fan though. If you want to get more of a collection on Batman, I'd recommend it. But if you're just starting out, there are better things to read out there for sure. Next, we got Batman The Adventures. Dude, I swear to... I need to find where to put this so the glare ain't in your asshole, you know what I'm saying? Batman The Adventure Continues Seasons 1. This is, it's by Alan Burnett. It is the, like, continuation, or it's set in the universe of the Batman animated series. If you love that show, pick this up. I just read all the pages with their voices from the show. Great art. It's exactly in the art style of, you know, the Batman animated series. Fantastic read. Highly recommend. Sorry, microphone. Boys, we got the iced coffee. It's time to refuel. Oh, and they made it perfectly. Oh, that's fucking hitting. Next, we have Batman R.I.P. by Grant Morrison. I'm gonna be honest with you. Grant Morrison's run on Batman, I don't know, a lot of people love it. I found Grant Morrison's run fucking dog shit. I still have volume 1. I returned volume 2 and 3 of the omnibus that I read. Not a fan. I think it's a little bit too out there for me, so I personally wouldn't recommend this, but I know a lot of other people enjoy it, so to each their own. We're gonna start off April with this. Technically, I read volumes 1 and 2 in March, and I read volumes 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in April, and volumes 9 and 10 in May, but I'm just gonna grab the whole goddamn stack so you can see what it's all about. I'm just gonna keep volume 1 out to talk about this series. This is verbatim for every single volume of this. 10 out of 10, peak fiction, greatest thing I've ever read, One of my favorite things I've ever been a part of. Fucking absolute pure bliss. Couldn't recommend this more to every goddamn person on the planet. Although I will admit, it is very dark, it is very sad, very gritty. A lot of bad shit happens in this, so if you're someone who's not okay with reading bad shit, I'd suppose stay away from it, but you'd be missing out on some of the greatest storytelling, greatest character work, greatest character design, most beautiful art, and just all-around peak fiction. That's Berserk. Next we have The Wrath of Ivar, from the Vikings Blood and Blade trilogy by Peter Gibbons. Just as good as book 1. Like I said, if you like the Vikings show, this book, because you got Ivar the Boneless in here, you got Bjorn Ironside, you got all of Ragnar's kid, you follow this kid chasing glory, you fight Ivar, you fight Bjorn, you see all of them, you hear them. Fantastic. Highly recommend. Boom. Before the Batman. This is the tie-in book to the Batman 2022. Only recommend if you really love Batman and the Batman movie, like I did. You can watch my entire hour-long review of the Batman 2022. You'll understand why I wanted this book. Great book, great edition. You get to read more about the universe that this Batman set in. Love it. Recommend to those who want to read about it. Next, we have A Short Introduction to Cosmology by Peter Coles. This is a series. It's called A Very Short Introduction series. It's by Oxford University. They get a lot of people who are, pretty much experts in the field. And it's like they say, it's a very short introduction to the anything it's talking about. And I have a bunch of books from this series. They got cosmology, astrophysics, black holes, Marx, capitalism, socialism. There's every kind of academia inside this thing. Highly recommend this series. Fantastic. Love the books. Love the way they're written. It's not super brief. You get a lot of information out of it. It's just not like pinpoint specific on every single thing. Like cosmic radiation background is mentioned in this, but it's not, it's like a chapter. There can be entire textbooks on this stuff. So like, that's what it means. Not very specific, but very, very good. Highly recommend. Next, we have The Poetry of World War I. I just grabbed the wrong fucking book. Poetry of World War I. This book was very sweet. It is literally just a bunch of poems written by people who were at war in World War I, by people who knew people who were at war in World War I. It's everything regarding that. Very sorrowful read, very beautiful. Definitely recommend. Critique of Pure Reason by Immanuel Kant, famous German philosopher. I actually had to read this for one of my classes. For those wondering, I'm a philosophy major. But yeah, fantastic book. This is very dense philosophy. If you're someone who's just trying to get into philosophy, I'd start with much more general things. I'd go with Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, Seneca, Marcus Aurelius. I'd go with much more general stuff. This is highly dense analytical logic. It is not easy to get through. It's for someone who's a little more seasoned with philosophical texts, so wouldn't recommend it for an entry-level person, but if you want to learn about analytical logic, Immanuel Kant's a great place to start. Man is one of the GOATs. And speaking of Marcus Aurelius, boom, there's Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. Fantastic book. Most people have read this by now. It's a pretty general and entry-level thing for philosophy, or even, contemporary readings about life. Everyone knows Marcus Aurelius. If you don't, fucking what are you doing? Step your game up. But yeah, I'd recommend this. Great book. A lot of great things in there. Marcus Aurelius was a fantastic person. Highly recommend. Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. Really good story, actually. It's a really nice book. It's basically about the idea of that everything is stealing, everything is imitation. Like, there is no art that's original. Everything is inspired by something, regardless of what it is. So you're stealing from somewhere. So art is always about stealing. It's always about interpretation from other people. But really nice book, really easy to read. I'd recommend this. Up next, we got the Batman Rebirth Deluxe Edition, Volume 1 by Tom King. A lot of people shit on Tom King's run on Batman. Not sure why. I really enjoy it. I love the art, and I love the story, and I love the character work. So I would highly recommend this. I don't know about other people, but I say yes. And we already went through, Berserk 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 was read this month, BT dubs, blah, 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 you get it. And we are starting May off with The Chronicles of Young Dastan. Now, this may seem like a stupid book, and you may be right, but it doesn't matter. Recently, it was in May. I watched Prince of Persia. It was one of my favorite movies as a kid. I loved the video games. I had this book since I was a kid, when it came out in 2012 or 2010, and I decided to reread it because I wonder what it would be like. It was actually surprisingly okay. It was decent. The ending was really rushed, unfortunately, but the rest of the story, really, really good. I'd actually recommend this for a kid's book if you want to give it to someone. Even if you're a bit older and you like Prince of Persia, I would read it. The ending's kind of shit, but what are you gonna do? And then speaking of Seneca, On the Shortness of Life. This is much like a Marcus Aurelius, another fantastic individual from the history of time, another philosopher. It's a series of short essays on different topics. Really, really thin book. It's like 50 pages, 80 pages, not very long. Really easy to get through, but fantastic material. Highly recommend. Next up, we have Greek Mythology, The Gods, Goddesses, and Heroes Handbook by Liv Albert. It's a great book, but it's not the book you think. If you're thinking about a book that gives you all the different stories from Greek mythology, this is not your book. There's another book I'm going to mention on the list. There's two actually, but we'll get to that later. This is more of a handbook. Tells you about all the different heroes, all the different gods, who they are, generally speaking, who are their children, their relationships, stuff like that. So it's more like a handbook. It's like, man, who was Perseus's father again? And if you forget that it's Zeus, you're like, here, let me search up here, and you're like, here's Zeus, here's Hephaestus, of course, blah, blah, blah. Great book, though. Really, really beautiful looking, great information. I'd recommend. Next up, we got Coraline by Neil Gaiman. Let me tell you something. Absolutely beautiful. I love the movie of Coraline. I didn't expect the book to be so much better, but it's like 10 times better. Really easy read. It's like 130 pages, not a lot of words on each one. Neil Gaiman has come to be one of my favorite authors. He just puts you in the atmosphere of the story. So beautifully written. There's a line in the book where Coraline talks about feeling at home, and the true meaning of feeling at home is how safe you feel in your bed. And you take for granted how good you feel sleeping in your own bed and how weird it feels to sleep somewhere else. That line really hit home with me, man. This book is fantastic. Highly recommend to anybody of any age. Beautiful book. Next, we have The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman. Another one I'd highly recommend. This happened to be one of my favorite books of the year. Beautifully written, beautiful story. Again, Neil Gaiman just puts you in the atmosphere. Like, when I started reading it, I had no idea where it was going. I was so confused. Beautiful book. I ended up loving it to death. Read it so quickly. I would recommend actually buying this specific version, though, because in this version, it's like beautiful illustrations and stuff, like in the writing and things like that. Like, it just puts you in to the story on some of the pages. It's just so atmospheric and gorgeous to look at. So I think it really helps with the feeling of the story. So highly recommend. Read this version if you're gonna read it. You'll end up loving it, just like I did. Next up, we got Terry Fox, A Story of Hope. This is a beautiful thing. I cried while reading this. It's by Maxine Trotter. There's another book by Terry Fox that I have on my shelf. I've yet to read, but I want to read it. Just, man, the story of Terry Fox. There are very few people in life I'd ever put on a pedestal to call a hero. This guy's one of them. If you don't know the story of Terry Fox, he is Canada's greatest hero. It's a guy who had cancer in his leg. He was a young kid, and he ran across Canada. Before cancer killed him, he couldn't complete it. And every year, everybody of all schools goes on a kilometer run or a 5-kilometer run to raise money for cancer. In this guy's name. He's raised over $1 billion in his name. One of the greatest people, definitely one of the greatest Canadian heroes. Highly recommend this little read. If you don't cry, you're heartless. Next up, The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I read this book shortly after I watched the movie, and I have the reaction to the movie up on my channel in case you want to check that out. Then I went on to read this book. God, the movie and the book just touched my heart in so many ways. Beautiful book, beautiful movie. I recommend both. Definitely recommend the book. Fantastic. Also, we're skipping the next two. The next two is Berserk Volumes 9 and Volume 10. We already went through that. You get it. Captain America and Iron Man, The Armor and the Shield by Derek Landy. Oh, right. It's basically Captain America and Iron Man taking on Hydra. So, like, you can't ask for much more. From what I remember, it's a decent read. It's good. Not amazing, but not horrible. Good art. Recommend. Next up, we got one of my favorite series in all of comics. Punisher Max by Garth Ennis. If you like The Punisher, this is kind of your jam. It's very gory, very harsh, pulls no punches, very explicit, but I'd highly recommend it to a Punisher fan. It makes Frank a little bit more unhinged, but it's a lot of fun. So it's really enjoyable, and the art is beautiful. And I like how it doesn't pull any punches, and it's just basically Frank Castle being a badass. It's less of the heroics, more of the badassery and savagery. But I'd recommend it nonetheless, so Punisher Max, Garth Ennis. And the last read of May, Vagabond, Volume 1, Viz Big Editions. Listen, man. Also peak fiction. Let me tell you. Also peak fiction, okay? Vagabond's amazing. Beautiful story, beautiful art, beautiful character work. It's about Miyamoto Musashi. If you know who he is, he's like one of the most badass Japanese samurais of all time. This book is basically about him, but it's also just about... It's like a warrior's journey, going from someone who's very bloodlusted and finding tranquility and serenity and just... Delicio. Highly recommend. If you can even get your hands on them, read it online. It's so hard to find the fucking physical copies, dude. For June, the entire Harry Potter series. And let me tell you something. These books are so goddamn fucking good, dude. Why does J.K. Rowling have to be a goddamn degenerate? These are so good. Okay? I'm sorry, they just are. Like, man, if you love the movies, read the books, because the books are basically the movies times 10. It's the feeling of the movies, the vibes of the movies, and you can envision the characters that they had because they're beautifully casted. And you just read the books, you just love them. You're sucked into the Harry Potter universe, you love every second. I mean, everybody knows Harry Potter, but like, man, the books are so good, dude. Highly recommend. Next up, we got Superman Smashes the Klan. Another fantastic story. I love the art in this, and it's a very sweet story. It is exactly what it sounds like. It is Superman fucking up the KKK. In the most Superman way possible. You take like the perspective of like this really sweet Asian family that moves in, and it's a bunch of degenerate white guys who are like, they don't belong here, and it's just Superman being Superman, like, shut your ass up, get your racist ass out of here, they're American, I'm American. What's up? Highly recommend. And for the month of June, 23 volumes of One Punch Man. Shit is gas. This is amazing. Absolutely. If you like the anime, you're gonna love the manga. The manga's insanity. The art is gorgeous and the story gets so much better. Let me tell you, this shit amazing. Couldn't recommend it more. One Punch Man. It was actually the first anime that really got me into anime. The anime itself is also amazing, so if you haven't seen the anime, watch the anime. And then if you want more from that universe, read the manga. So goddamn good. Next up, we got Ghost Rider, The Return of Blaze. This is, of course, Johnny Blaze, not Robbie Reyes. Johnny Blaze, the one that I grew up with. It's the Ghost Rider I love, so read that shit. Great art, good story, decent. I'd recommend to a Ghost Rider fan for sure. Earlier, we had Batman The Adventure Continues Season 1 by Paul Dini. Now we have Season 2. Again, same thing. This is the Batman Animated Series Universe comic line by Paul Dini, who was one of the writers on the Batman Animated Series. If you want to read Season 1, make sure you read Season 2 as well. Great stories, love them, can't go wrong. And the last read of June, Trinity by Matt Wagner. This is, as it sounds, about Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. The Holy Trinity of the DC Universe. Great story. You got the three goats. Can't ask for much more. I'd recommend. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, baby. So, again, the same thing though. First two books, Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers, were read in July. Third one, The Return of the King, was read in August. Let me just say this, man. The Hobbit is a better book than the Lord of the Rings books, FYI. The movies are better than the book. Not gonna lie, the book is mad fucking boring. All three of the books. Gets a little bit better in The Return of the King. Book 1 is super boring. Book 2 is kind of boring. Like, they're really not that exciting. They're kind of slow. But I love being in the universe, so it's okay. But if you're gonna read them, expect it being slow. And the way they do it, they cut it in half, so it's like, Book 1, you're just with Frodo and Sam, following their journey. Book 2 of Book 1, you're with the Fellowship and you're following their journey. Each book is divided into 2 books. One is Sam and Frodo, the rest is the rest of the group. So it's kind of odd how they do that, how he did that, instead of like splicing them together, but it's how it is. I'd recommend it to a Lord of the Rings fan, but if you've never read the books, be prepared for a slow trudge. It's not fast-paced or exciting, okay? Next up for July, we got Vinland Saga, Book 1, 2, and 3 by Makoto Yukimura. Vinland Saga, much like Vagabond and Berserk, are kind of the top 3 of the Shinen genre. Is that how you pronounce it? Shinen? I think so. Or maybe it's pronounced Seinen? I don't know how to pronounce it. But Vagabond, Vinland Saga, Berserk are kind of the big 3 of the Seinen genre. Vinland Saga, dude. So good. The art is beautiful. I think this is a really good starting point for someone to get into manga. If I were to recommend where to start, I'd actually go with this guy. Over One Punch Man, over Berserk, over Vagabond. I'd say start with Vinland Saga. I think it's much more entry-level friendly. So, I'd recommend these guys. But the story itself is just gorgeous. This top tier right here. Top tier. Highly recommend. Next up for July, we have God of War Fallen God. It's like the graphic novel section of the God of War series. Not that great, if I'm being honest. Writing's kind of bleh. Art's okay. Not that great. If you want the God of War stuff, play the games. Read the books. Not the graphic novels, the books. But yeah, not fantastic. If you want to read it, okay, but I wouldn't recommend it. And the last book of July, Batman Hush by Jeff Loeb. I mean, what can I say about this one that hasn't already been said? Fantastic book. Everybody knows it pretty much at this point. Great story. Batman v Batman, basically, but not really. But, yeah, fantastic art. Inspired a lot of different iterations of Batman, so I'd read it. But go on to the second book of August, The Hobbit. This is my second time reading this. I reread it again because I was watching the movies, so I wanted to reread it after taking such a long jump from watching the movies again. The Hobbit movies are nowhere near as good as this fucking book. This book is amazing. Both times I've read it, it's the best book, for sure, in the Lord of the Rings universe. Much better than the Lord of the Rings books. The Hobbit, as a one standalone book, amazing. Couldn't recommend it anymore to anybody. Fantastic. Next up, we have God of War by Cory Barlog. This is the book version of the 2018 God of War game. So, if you're playing the game, don't really need to read the book. It doesn't really give you any excess information. It does sometimes, but not enough to warrant necessarily buying it. But if you're a super fan of the God of War series like I am, I'd buy the book. It was pretty great to read. I enjoyed it still. Gives you enough differences that it warrants buying the book, but not enough that you should go out of your way if you don't really care that much. Am I losing my mind? Next book of August, The Lessons of History by Will and Ariel Durant. It's a good book, not amazing. It's basically a series of essays about different things that happen throughout history. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody because it's not amazing, but it's decent. So, if you want to read something about lessons of history, I suppose you could do that, but there are definitely better books that give you the ideas that this is trying to give you. So, next up we have The Saga of the Volsungs. It's the Poetic Edda, basically, by Jackson Crawford. I would say it's actually really good. I would say it's actually really good. It also has the Saga of Ragnar Lothbrok in here as well. It gives you a lot of history of Norse history and the characters and the people. So I would actually recommend this if you want to learn about Norse history. It's a good book. Recommend. And Berserk Volume 10 Deluxe Edition was read in this month. Next up, we have Mouse. This is by Art Spiegelman. It's a really touching story. It's basically about a kid talking about his dad's journey through World War II and through Auschwitz and the concentration camps and stuff. The ending really touched home with him and his dad. Like, it's more about a story between a son and a father and less about what the father went through in Auschwitz, but again, it's what it revolves around. It revolves around the Germans, the Nazis, and what they did to Jewish people. But, fantastic story. Won a lot of prizes. Was banned in some schools for some reason, I'm not sure why, but it's a great story. I'd recommend it. Definitely. Alright, we're starting September off with a banger. Mythos by Stephen Fry. Oh, now this is a great book. This is more along the lines of what I was talking about earlier. If you wanted to read about a book that tells you about the stories of Greek mythology, this is your guy. Very in-depth, a lot of stories, done really, really well. Stephen Fry, masterclass of a person. Great writing. Love his I love his prose. I love the way he writes. So this is very easy to understand, very enjoyable to read. He makes the stories really enjoyable and really enticing. Highly recommend this. We are starting our September off with another banger as well. After Mythos Stephen Fry, we have A Study in Scarlet by Arthur Conan Doyle. This is Sherlock Holmes. Study in Scarlet is the first ever book published by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle about Sherlock Holmes. There are 4 novels. A Study in Scarlet is one of them. The rest of them are short story kind of stuff. I'm currently on my way through reading The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which is his first short story publications of it. So that's like one book by itself. You're gonna see a lot more Sherlock Holmes, not as many written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, but I'm currently working my way through there. But again, Sherlock Holmes, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, some of the greatest shit you'll ever read. Highly recommend. And here we have, boom, A Queen's Gambit. If you watched the show and loved the show, I'd recommend the book. The book is very good. I liked it a lot too. But if you watch the show, you won't get a tremendous amount more from the book, but you'll get a decent amount more that it's definitely worth reading. In case you want to see my reaction to Queen's Gambit, it's up on my channel. I don't have a physical copy of the next book. I read that on Audible, but I am planning on getting the physical copy, but in case you don't know what it is Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This is a man's story, again through the concentration camps. A Jewish man's story about the Nazis and about what happened in World War II. Very beautifully written, great story, very touching, very real and authentic look at what happened. Highly recommend. Next up we have Sherlock Holmes and the Beast of the Stapletons by James Lovegrove. This is James Lovegrove's first book in the Sherlock Holmes repertoire. Not great. I think it was very okay. He goes on to write more, and we'll go through them. This is his worst one, but he gets progressively better. So that's a good thing. But this one was very blah. I'd give it like a 6 out of 10. It's not great, not horrendous, but definitely not good. So it's iffy. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but it's okay. The next book by James Lovegrove, Sherlock Holmes and the Christmas Demon. Now this one, a step up. I enjoyed this a lot more. I think the story was better written. I think the characters were better written. I think it was better paced. I enjoyed this one a lot more. This one I would recommend to a Sherlock Holmes fan, and even someone who just wants a good book. This one I'd recommend, not the other one. Next up we have Batman, One Dark Night by Jock. This is a great one. The art is amazing, the story is really good. I highly enjoyed this. Definitely recommend to a Batman fan. Even a general comics fan, I'd recommend. Like an 8 out of 10. Next up we have Batman Ego by Darwin Cook. I don't think this is nearly as good as everyone claims it to be. A lot of people, maybe they oversold it too much for me and I ended up not enjoying it because I had too high expectations, but it wasn't as good as I thought it would be. It was good though, don't get me wrong, it wasn't bad, but it just was not as good as I thought it would be. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I'd recommend it though, it is decent. Next we have Devil's Reign by Chip Zdarsky. This was like the big kind of crossover tie-in event-ish thing, taking place after Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil run, and it's like all the New York superheroes coming together against Fisk. It's a decent culmination, and then the story continues, obviously. It's pretty decent. I don't think it's amazing, but I think it's good. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I'd recommend it, though. But first, obviously, read volumes 1 through 6 of Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil before you read this guy. Next up, we got Batman the Imposter. This one, again, super recommend. Beautiful artwork, fantastic story, couldn't put it down. I loved it. I'd give it like an 8 out of 10. By Mattinson Tomlin, so I'd recommend this. I'd read it. And we start off October with A Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. What can I say about the series that hasn't already been said? One of the greatest fantasy series of all time. The show is one of the greatest shows of all time. If you like the show, I'd read the book. But if you don't like the show, I don't think the book is going to make you like it that much more. It really is. The adaptation of the show is fantastic, especially in the early seasons. So like, Season 1 is kind of what the book is about, and they're not short books by any means, so it'd be a long trudge through to read something you don't enjoy. So if you like the show, I'd recommend the books. If you don't like the show, I don't know if the book's gonna make you like it anymore. Next up, we have All Quiet on the Western Front. I read this in October. It was decent, especially now. There's a movie that came out for it, so I think I'm gonna watch that soon since I've read the book. It was decent, but like, first when I started reading it, it felt very not lackluster, but very clustered. Like, it was all over the place. I didn't really know what the fuck the story was. Like, it's not like 1917 where you had these two characters you were following and you knew the story. Like, it felt very jumbled together at the beginning of this, but as it went on, I really enjoyed the ending a bit more, and as the story progressed, but I think the beginning is very all over the place. But it's a good read. I enjoyed it. I'd give it like a 7 out of 10, but I'd recommend it. Up next, we got Vinland Saga. Books. Oh, that's the fucking wrong way. Books. Can you? No glare? Alright, whatever, dude. There's book 4. Then we got book 5. And we got book 6. Again, same verbatim as 1, 2, and 3. Vinland Saga. Fantastic. Couldn't recommend it more. I gave all of these 4, 5, and 6 like 9 out of 10s. Amazing. Loved it. Recommend. I don't have a picture. I mean, I don't have the physical copy of Volume 2, but I reread Vagabond Visbig Editions Volume 1, and then I read Volume 2 because I found somewhere to read Vagabond online. I now have the physical copies of volumes 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, so I don't have to read those online. But for a long time, I stopped reading it because I couldn't find anywhere to read it, and I couldn't find anywhere to buy it. I found online a place to read it, so currently reading through it. I am loving Vagabond. Same thing as before, amazing series. Love it. Next up, we have Ghost Rider Unchained by Benjamin Percy. Another thing again, good read. If you like Ghost Rider, it's a solid story. If you've never read any Ghost Rider, there are better places to begin. So I'd recommend it to a Ghost Rider fan, wouldn't to someone who's never read anything about him. But it's a good story. But this one's with Johnny Blaze and not with Robbie Reyes. So if you like Robbie more, maybe not. If you like Johnny Blaze, go for it. Next up, we have The Batman Who Laughs by Scott Snyder. I really enjoyed this one. This is basically Batman who falls prey and victim to the Joker toxin, and it actually meshes together with Bruce Wayne, and he just becomes the Jokerized version of Batman. Bro is unstoppable, kills everything and everybody, and you watch Batman slowly face off against himself, but with no restrictions. It's a great story, fantastic art. I mean, Scott Snyder, you can't go wrong. Definitely recommend. And the last read of October, Batman the Detective by Tom Taylor. Highly recommend this. Beautiful art, fantastic story. You're following Batman through a bunch of different places. Batman being Batman. Don't want to give away the story, but it is really, really good. I gave this one like a 9 out of 10. Highly recommend this guy. So to start off with, we have a series of 4, a quadrilogy. There's actually a 5th book, but I haven't read the 5th book. A quadrilogy of the Sherlock Holmes series. This one's by Bonnie McBird. First, we got Art in the Blood. This is her first go at it. Gave it a 7 out of 10. Wasn't great, wasn't horrible, but definitely kind of bleh in some spots, but a very good start. We go on to Unique Spirits. Now this guy, I gave this a 9 out of 10. This was brilliant. This is the best book out of the 4 I've read of hers. Fantastic, especially the ending. Her character work with John and Sherlock is just absolutely amazing. I love how she writes Sherlock. I love how she writes John. Love the story of this one. I love where it takes place. Everything about this book, best one out of it. I gave it a 9 out of 10. Next up, we have The Devil's Due by Bonnie McBird. Again, this is book 3 in her series. I gave this one an 8 out of 10. Still very good continuation. I'd recommend as well. And the last in the series, The Three Locks. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. It wasn't as good as the prior 2, but still a decent one. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend it for a Sherlock fan, but not for just anybody. But this entire series I think is great. I'd recommend to most people, but that Unique Spirits one, I'd definitely give that one a go to anybody. Fantastic story. Next up, we have Woke Racism by John McWhorter. I didn't know what to think of this going into it. I didn't know how it would be, but I heard a lot of great things about it, so I always wanted to read it. Ended up reading it. I gave it like a 9 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I think it's a great look at different kinds of thing regarding race. I think it's for people who are like on the fence, let's say. I'm not necessarily saying that's me. I'm just saying that's what he says in this book. He's like, I don't think I'm going to change any radicalist mind. If you're far right or far left, I don't know if this changes you. It's more aimed at the people in the middle who are just like, I don't really know what to do or care. So I guess that's who it's for. So if that fits you, go for it. Even if it doesn't fit your description, why take yourself away from knowledge from different perspectives? I'd go for it. I quite enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. I'd go for it. I don't have a picture of this next one, but it is God Is Not Great by Christopher Hitchens. This is kind of the same thing with Richard Dawkins' book. I gave this one a 7 out of 10. I think it goes for the same thing that Richard Dawkins' books goes for, but it doesn't do it as well, in my opinion. It's kind of how he feels about it, I suppose, and he has his own points, and it's good enough as is, but I just don't think his language comes across as convincing as Richard Dawkins does. But I like Christopher Hitchens as an individual, but this book wasn't great. I gave it like a 6 out of 10. I don't think it's amazing. I probably wouldn't recommend it to most people. If you really like Christopher Hitchens, go for it, but like, I don't think it's that great. Next up, we have Post-Truth by Matthew Dancona. I gave this like an 8 out of 10. I actually really enjoyed this. It's kind of the idea of the truth that's circulating media and social media, and like what is true anymore, or do people actually care about the truth, objective truth? He calls it the post-truth era and quote-unquote how to fight it. I don't really think there's much information about how to quote-unquote fight it, but it is a nice contemporary look about our current situation regarding information and how people react to information. So I actually quite really enjoyed it. It's a pretty easy read. It's like 140 pages. You can get through it pretty quickly. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I'd recommend it. Next up, I have Sign of the Four, which is by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. It's the second novel released for Sherlock Holmes. This is this houses the exact same amount of stories as the other one I showed you. I'm just showing off my Sherlock Holmes collection. Don't worry about it. Sign of the Four was okay. I actually don't think it was that great. I gave it like a 7 out of 10. I liked Study in Scarlet better. But now I'm on The Adventure of Sherlock Holmes, which is the short story one, and I'm really enjoying that one, so I'd give it like a 7 out of 10. I'd recommend it, but wasn't amazing. And up next we have One Punch Man Volume 24. Again, verbatim for volumes 1 through 23. Fantastic series. I love it. Beautiful art, beautiful story. Can't recommend it enough. Read it. And the last book of November, Batman 1989 by Sam Hamm. This takes place in the universe of Batman 89, which I haven't actually watched. I mean to, but I haven't yet. But in terms of the story, I found it really boring. The art was nice enough, but I think the story was very blah. I gave it a 6 out of 10. I probably wouldn't recommend it. I know a lot of people like the Batman 89 movie, and I've heard that it's good, so I'd probably recommend watching that over reading this. So I'd say save your money, don't bother reading it, it's not that important. And the first read of December, A Clash of Kings, Book 2 in the Game of Thrones series, or A Song of Ice and Fire series. Verbatim of Book 1, the books are pretty much the same as the seasons at this point, not a lot of differences, even lines for lines taken straight out of the pages onto the show. Great books, great series. I'd recommend if you like the show. If you don't like the show, again, don't bother reading the books. I don't think you'll enjoy it that much more. Remember that first issue I showed you back in March or May or whatever it was? Here is the actual volume 1 of it. Punisher, The King of Killers by Jason Aaron. I gave this a 9 out of 10. I really liked this. The story was awesome. Frank being Frank, Punisher being Punisher. Ends with the craziest cliffhanger. Pissed me off. Can't wait for the further issues because I can't wait to keep reading this. Absolutely amazing. Loved it, recommend it, go for it. And the last book that I read going on for 2022, I think it's fitting. Berserk, Volume 11 Deluxe Edition. Volume 12 is currently about to come out, and it's gonna get to my house in a few days, but for right now, this is the last book I've read this year. I gave this one a 10 out of 10, man. God damn. This volume is amazing. Guts being Guts. The character work between Guts and Sharik is amazing. Love the art, love the story. Can't recommend Berserk enough. Last book I read. And that is it. I will have like the counter over here, so you'll see what it is. I think it's 140 or 141 books. I reread Berserk Volume 10 is the only book I think I reread this year. I read it twice. Once when I actually got it, and once again in preparation for Volume 11. So that is it. I hope you enjoyed. Tell me what you thought. Tell me the books you've been reading. Tell me what you think of all the books I've read, and if any of them sound interesting to you. Make sure you check my channel out. I'm mainly a reaction channel, not a booktube channel, but I decided to do this because I wanted to see how many books I could read in a year, or how many books I normally read in a year. So I decided to take them down, and now here we are. This is what we got. I also have a bunch of quotes that I've written down from the books I've read throughout the year, because I've decided to start doing that because it sounds like fun. Because there's so many times when you're reading a book and you're like, oh god, that's beautiful, and then you forget it. And I don't like doing that, so I want to start writing them down. So I started doing that, but only in like the latter half of the year, like from like September onwards. So I missed all the books I read throughout the beginning of the year, unfortunately. But that's gonna be it from me. I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace. Hey guys, thank you all for watching that recent video, and I just want to give a special shout out to Oko Canutilla. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm really sorry if I'm not, but just want to give a special shout out to you. You've been subscribed to my tier 1 on Patreon for a while now, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for the support. Love you guys.